Developing Cultural Intelligence in Global Business, a professional development webinar. Dr. Sofia Chen, a cross-cultural business consultant, is presenting on developing cultural intelligence. Participants include professionals from various industries with international responsibilities.
Welcome, everyone, to today's session on developing cultural intelligence in global business. Before we dive in, I'd like to start with a quick poll. How many of you have experienced a situation where cultural differences created unexpected challenges in a business interaction? Please use the reaction button to indicate yes. Wow, that's nearly everyone. This confirms what research consistently shows. Cultural differences significantly impact business interactions, yet they often catch us by surprise. Today, we'll explore how to develop cultural intelligence to navigate these differences more effectively. Let me begin with a simple but powerful definition. Cultural intelligence, or CQ, is the capability to function effectively across various cultural contexts. Unlike IQ or EQ, which are relatively stable, CQ can be developed through awareness, knowledge, and practice.
Is cultural intelligence really that different from emotional intelligence? Isn't being sensitive to others essentially the same, regardless of culture?
That's an excellent question. While there is some overlap, emotional intelligence operates within cultural frameworks. What constitutes appropriate emotional expression or empathetic response varies significantly across cultures. For instance, in some cultures, showing strong emotions in business settings demonstrates passion and commitment. In others, emotional restraint signals professionalism and reliability. If we had greater cultural intelligence, we would recognize that these different approaches to emotional expression aren't right or wrong, just different. Cultural intelligence helps us interpret emotions and behaviors through the appropriate cultural lens rather than our own default framework. Let me share a case study that illustrates this distinction. A European manager with high emotional intelligence was sent to lead a team in Japan. Despite his strong people skills, he struggled because he interpreted his Japanese team's communication style through his European cultural lens. Their reluctance to speak up in meetings, tendency to consult widely before making decisions, and indirect feedback style frustrated him. If he had developed cultural intelligence alongside his emotional intelligence, he would have recognized these behaviors as culturally appropriate rather than problematic. He would have adapted his leadership approach accordingly.
That makes sense. So how do we actually develop this cultural intelligence?
Cultural intelligence develops through 4 key capabilities, which we can think of as the CQ framework: CQ drive, CQ knowledge, CQ strategy, and CQ action. Let's start with CQ drive, your motivation and interest in engaging with different cultures. This includes your confidence in cross-cultural situations and the value you place on cultural diversity. Without this motivation, other aspects of cultural intelligence won't develop fully. You can strengthen your CQ drive by seeking opportunities for cross-cultural interaction, reflecting on your cross-cultural experiences, identifying personal benefits from cultural learning, challenging your comfort zone in cultural situations. The second component is CQ knowledge, your understanding of cultural similarities and differences. This includes knowledge of cultural values, practices, systems, and languages.
Is this just about memorizing cultural do's and don'ts for different countries?
That's a common misconception. While specific cultural knowledge is valuable, CQ knowledge is broader. It's about understanding cultural frameworks and dimensions that help you make sense of differences you encounter. For example, understanding the concept of power distance, how cultures view hierarchy and authority, helps you interpret behaviors across many cultures, rather than memorizing specific rules for each country. If you understand that some cultures have high power distance, you'll recognize why decisions might require approval from the highest authority, even if you haven't specifically studied that particular country. To develop CQ knowledge, study cultural frameworks like those we discussed earlier. Learn about specific cultures where you do business. Understand historical and social contexts that shape cultural norms. Recognize variation within cultures based on region, generation, and individual differences. The third component is CQ strategy, your awareness and ability to plan for multicultural interactions. This involves being mindful during cross-cultural encounters, checking assumptions, and adjusting mental models when experience doesn't match expectations.
Can you give an example of CQ strategy in action?
Certainly. Imagine you're preparing for a negotiation with a new international partner. CQ strategy would involve 1. Planning ahead by researching their cultural background and typical negotiation approaches. 2. Becoming aware of your own cultural assumptions about good negotiation. 3. Monitoring the interaction as it unfolds, noting when behaviors don't match your expectations. 4. Adjusting your mental framework to incorporate new understanding. For instance, if you notice your counterparts seem uncomfortable with your direct questions about pricing, CQ strategy would help you recognize this as potentially culture-related rather than evasiveness. You might adjust your approach to be more indirect or relationship-focused. To develop CQ strategy, practice mindfulness in cross-cultural interactions. Question your interpretations of others' behaviors. Plan for cultural differences before important interactions. Reflect on cross-cultural experiences to extract learning. The fourth component is CQ action, your ability to adapt verbal and nonverbal behaviors appropriately in different cultural contexts. This is where knowledge and strategy translate into effective behavior.
How do you adapt without seeming inauthentic or like you're stereotyping?
Dr. Chen.
That's a thoughtful question that many people struggle with. Cultural adaptation isn't about completely changing your personality or mimicking others in ways that feel inauthentic. It's about making thoughtful adjustments that demonstrate respect and facilitate effective communication. For example, if you're naturally very direct and you're working with a culture that values indirect communication, you don't need to become a different person. You might simply preface direct questions with relationship-building conversation. Frame feedback as suggestions rather than directives. Pay more attention to nonverbal cues and indirect responses. These adjustments maintain your authenticity while acknowledging cultural differences. The key is finding the balance between being yourself and being effective in different cultural contexts. To develop CQ action, practice adapting communication styles for different audiences. Expand your behavioral repertoire through observation and practice. Seek feedback on your cross-cultural effectiveness. Make incremental adjustments rather than dramatic changes.
This framework makes sense for individuals, but how do organizations develop cultural intelligence at a systemic level?
That's where organizational CQ becomes crucial. If organizations had invested more in cultural intelligence development, they would have avoided many costly international business failures we've seen over the years. Organizations can develop cultural intelligence through several approaches. First, integrate CQ into talent management, from hiring to development to promotion. Look for candidates with international experience or demonstrated adaptability. Create development pathways. First, integrate CQ into talent management, from hiring to development to promotion. Look for candidates with international experience or demonstrated adaptability. Create development pathways that build CQ through training, mentoring, and job rotations. Second, foster a diverse and inclusive workplace. Create teams that bring together different cultural perspectives and ensure that all voices are heard and valued. Third, establish cultural support systems. Provide resources for employees working across cultures, such as language training, cultural mentors, and access to expert advice. Fourth, create a culture of continuous learning. Encourage employees to reflect on their cross-cultural experiences, share insights, and develop new approaches. Finally, measure and reward cultural intelligence. Integrate CQ metrics into performance evaluations and recognize those who demonstrate exceptional cross-cultural competence.
What about the role of technology in promoting cross-cultural understanding? Can virtual collaboration tools help or hinder?
Technology can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it connects people across distances and provides access to diverse perspectives. On the other hand, it can also amplify existing biases or create new challenges. To leverage technology effectively for cross-cultural collaboration, use technology thoughtfully to create shared experiences. Be mindful of unequal access to technology. Establish clear communication protocols for virtual interactions. Provide language support and translation tools when needed. Encourage face-to-face interaction when possible. If we hadn't used technology intentionally, we would have missed the opportunity to create deeper connections across geographically dispersed teams. Let me conclude by emphasizing that cultural intelligence is not about memorizing a list of do's and don'ts for each country. It's about developing a mindset of curiosity, respect, and adaptability that enables you to navigate diverse cultural contexts effectively. It's about building cultural bridges rather than cultural barriers. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, cultural intelligence will only become more valuable. Organizations and individuals who invest in developing this capability will gain a significant competitive advantage in the global marketplace. What specific action will you take to develop your cultural intelligence after today's session?